You have probably heard the old saying, when it rains, it pours. I'm sure my next guest felt that way. Sharlene and Chad Dixon were married for a short time when it seemed like every health scare imaginable came their way, attacking their growing family. From surviving cancer, a brain tumor, 2 organ transplants, and miscarriages, they are still standing and are here today to share how God ushered them through each trial, reaffirming their faith in Him. Welcome, Chad and Sharlene.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So the story starts, both of you had become Christians early on in your lives. Marriage was in store. You two got married eventually. Moved 10 times over 2 years, and had a miscarriage in the midst of this. And then eventually had 2 children within the span of 18 months. You were busy, Sharlene.
Yes.
And then there was a cancer scare in your tibia. Tell me about that, Sharlene.
So shortly after Joelle was born, my second, I was having difficulty walking in my pregnancy, and it got to the point where I had to get an x-ray. Thought it was no big deal, and turned out that there was a giant cell tumor in my tibia. So with Joelle being barely 2 months old, I was in the hospital facing surgery. You know, they had to pack the bone, they had to take it out. So it was a very fragile time. And just with the process of having to move 10 times, my firstborn being high energy, and then the secondborn coming along with this cast and 3 months of recovery was really traumatic, actually. Yeah.
I can imagine. You have 2 young children at home and you're dealing with your own health concerns. And then there was some depression that kind of eased into.
It came in, yeah. It was, there's a quote, and I'm not going to say it well, but it's from Lord of the Rings, and it's where Bilbo has come out of all his difficulties and is with the fairies, I guess. And he looked shaken, and he said, I feel like butter spread over too much bread. It's an odd thing to say, but I think it captures exactly how I felt. It was just so thin and frail, and like an egg that could crack too easily.
I think many moms at home could probably attest to feeling that way at some point, dealing with everything. But you also had the health challenges as well. And then you are pregnant again.
Yes.
And this time it's a son, Felix. And Felix is born with some health challenges. Tell us about that.
Well, he looked great for the first few weeks, and then he had a pneumonia, so we sent him off to the hospital. He was yellowish, but you know, every young baby is yellowish often. And as we were going through the process of getting him better, they discovered that his liver counts were way off. And so many weeks of investigation, 6 weeks in the hospital, very little sleep. And to finally discover that he did have biliary atresia, a shrinking of the ducts, which would just cause
Of
no
the
flow.
liver ducts?
Yeah.
Okay.
So no flow, and which eventually death of the liver. So we managed to get him to 8 years, which was a miracle in itself. They kept trying to convince me, you're going to be facing surgery at, you know, less than 2 years old, and we got him there. So yeah.
And then Chad, you have your own health scare. There's a tumor that's found in your brain.
Yeah, I guess it was about 9 months after Felix was born. I was at work, and it was the last day before Christmas vacation, and we were just packing up, and I had a mother of all headaches, and I had headaches for 3 days before that. I thought I was having migraines for the first time in my life, and that day was a whopper, and I had a coworker drive me to a walk-in clinic, where the last thing I remember doing is kicking the walls of the clinic, saying, somebody's got to help me, somebody's got to help me. And that's the last thing I remember. And then I woke up with a great big bandage on my head, and people asking me, do I know who I am, and what's my name, and where are you right now? And yeah, so I guess They told me I had had a colloid cyst between my third and fourth ventricle in my brain, which stopped the flow of cerebral spinal fluid, causing immense intracranial pressure, and that's another hour, and I could have been dead.
Wow.
So they say I flatlined on the table, and they had to resuscitate me. So I'm very thankful for the surgeons and for the nurses and the healthcare professionals that acted so quickly and got me got the operation underway.
And just before you went into that coma, you turned to Sharlene and asked her, "Who's that man that walked across water?"
Yeah.
And Sharlene said, "Jesus," and you kept repeating, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," as you slipped into this coma.
Yeah.
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 And then after that, you have a couple more miscarriages, and then Cora is born, and Cora is also born with some health challenges.
Yeah, we did have Teresa in the middle of that.
Teresa,
so there's
sorry,
five,
yes.
yeah. Yes, then we had Cora. Cora looked really, really healthy, and I was nursing her, and 3 days later, she just was dehydrated, and initially the midwife said, "Well, you gotta get her on, or you gotta breastfeed more," and I'm like, "I'm breastfeeding," but it was the nature of her kidneys. Her kidneys were flushing out water more than they could take in, and so it was determined very quickly that she had significant kidney issues. At that point, it was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I've asked that question probably 10 times before that, but it just was really, it hit hard.
Yeah.
It hit hard. It's like, this is not right. So it was just facing that.
How did you hold on to faith? Because I just think, there's a lot of anger that would rise out of me. I'm just thinking of myself, losing children, going through cancer, going through a tumor, having to deal with the health issues of your own children. How do you deal with your faith in this? And what is the conversation that you're having with God in the midst of all of this?
Well, I think it felt like faith held us, like God really showed He was with us powerfully on a number of occasions, and we just.
I think faith was a necessity. It wasn't. You often think, and you applaud people for being so faithful. It wasn't about us being faithful. It was about us grabbing onto faith and saying, "I have to have this. God, you gave me this as a gift. This is mine as I go through all these situations." And the anger. It was funny because I don't feel like I ever was angry with God, but I sure was angry with the enemy. And I directed my anger I focused the anger to where I felt it was appropriate. Yeah.
So we fast forward a little. You get through your scare with the tumor, Chad. You're recovering well. And then Felix comes to your room one day, and he's throwing up blood.
Yeah.
And we only have a couple minutes left, but Felix is rushed to the hospital. You find out he needs a transplant, and you offer to donate your liver to Felix.
It was neat how it was set up. Like it was like, they came to me, they phoned me out of the blue and said like in a week, we can give him a transplant in a week if you want to do this in a week. We need you to come to Toronto quickly for blood work. And so I hopped in my car in rush hour on a Friday afternoon and made it to Toronto in 40 minutes.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. And everything was just set up nicely. I had the blood work by the end of the day, and the next week we're having a transplant. And it was
on his birthday.
Yeah, on Felix's birthday.
Felix's
birthday, yeah. So it was really neat.
And then a couple years later, if you don't think that's enough, Cora then needs a transplant, a kidney transplant. And you again step up and say, "I'll do it."
Yeah, we had looked at Sharlene firstly, and then we thought that maybe she had recurrent UTIs and kidney infections and stuff in her past. So I just figured that maybe I should make another go of it, see if I could be the primary. So they said that my blood work was showing well, and it worked out for me. So, yeah.
When both of you look back at just everything that has happened and you see that you're still standing and that God is still real in your life, what do you want people to know that might be questioning, that might be going through a hard time? What do they need to hold on to and remember as they go through their trials like you went through yours?
I think God knows everything that you're going to be facing or that you are facing. I think that it is an overcoming story. He has called us to overcome. And so these things are for not for anything. They are for our next generation. They are for the life we have right now. And it is ultimately a gift. We will see the fruit of it.
And make sure you don't shut off God. You know, like you can yell at him. You can cry, you can get mad at him, but just listen for responses. Like keep your, God will respond.
Yeah, I think that is so big that he, we hear these stories about we live in a broken world, but he has so much he wants to tell us. And in our cries out in desperation and in opening our ears in desperation, we will hear the things we need to hear for the moment and for the next moment and the next, and just to walk those out faithfully.
Thank you again, Chad, Sharlene. We say through every test there's a testimony. This is a testimony. Thank you again.